My uncle left it to me in his will and I signed the papers. Without much thought I arrived here a few weeks ago and tried to treat the place like any normal house. The roof didn't leak, the floors didn't creak at first glance, and the walls didn't look like they were going to collapse. It seemed stable enough, but something was wrong. As soon as I opened the front door the air smelled stale and there was a slight draft running through the hallway. Even with all the windows closed, it wasn't until the third night that I started hearing those noises upstairs. They sounded like footsteps or shuffling. I couldn't tell if they were animals or just the house settling down, but the more I listened the more I realized it was coming from the attic. At first I tried to ignore it, but it got louder every night. Finally I got a flashlight and decided to check. I remember walking up the narrow stairs to the attic. They creaked under my weight as if they hadn't been stepped on up for years. My heart pounded in my chest. The darkness around me felt heavy and cold. I heard that same shuffling noise. Maybe 6 feet ahead. I stopped at the top step and held my breath, shining the flashlight in slow arcs. There were old boxes stacked against the sloping ceiling. They were all covered in a thick layer of dust. I smelled something musty like wet cardboard and rotten wood. As I moved closer my shoes kicked up clouds of dust that made me cough. At first I saw no movement, just shadows dancing in the flashlight's weak beam. Then I heard a scratching sound against a wall. My pulse sped up. I pointed the flashlight toward the noise and thought I saw something. It was a shape near and far. A low crouch with long limbs and thin shoulders. I froze. I couldn't make out its face or features, but I saw the faint outline of its chest rising and falling with each breath. The thing was panting softly as if it were struggling to breathe. My hand started to shake. I felt sweat running down the side of my face. I swallowed and tried to step closer, but as I moved the shape slid into the darkness. I didn't see it run. It just moved out of range of the flashlight, and I heard another scratching on the floor. I followed the sound, but all I found were a few long scratches on the wooden planks. They looked new, small pieces of wood curled at the edges of these, and I could see them running in parallel grooves as if claws had made them. My stomach churned as I imagined the shape had claws. I checked around the area, but it had disappeared. I listened for breathing and heard nothing for a few minutes. I found myself standing there in complete silence, still holding the flashlight out. I went back downstairs, locked the bedroom door and tried to sleep. My mind couldn't calm down. I stared at the dark ceiling, going through all the details in my head, wondering if I seeing something. The next morning I woke up feeling shaky. I walked around the house, checking every room. Everything looked normal on the ground floor. During the day, the place was almost harmless. I opened the fridge for some orange juice and noticed my hands were still shaking. That's when I decided to look through some of my uncle's old papers. I found them in the study, tucked in the desk drawer. There were letters, old receipts and ownership papers. None of them mentioned the attic. Nothing to suggest that he had some strange pet there or that he believed there was anything dangerous inside. I spent the afternoon trying to forget about it. I walked into the living room and changed the channel on the TV, hoping to distract myself, but every now and then, usually I glanced at the ceiling, expecting to hear that noise again. At dinner time, I decided to make a sandwich. The bread smelled delicious, but I was barely hungry. My fingers were still shaking, shivering. My thoughts kept returning to that shape, that bony outline and that wheezing sound. I told myself it could be an animal, maybe a large raccoon or a stray cat, but deep down I knew I was lying to myself. That night, I tried to go to bed early but couldn't sleep for more than an hour. I woke up around 2 a.m. and heard it. This time the scratching was a little louder. It sounded like claws on the loft floor moving back and forth. I lay in bed, heart pounding, trying to decide if I should go back, pulse pounding in my temples, jaw clenched until it ached. Finally I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a flashlight, a baseball bat, I found in the closet and went up the loft stairs. When I got to the top, my nerves were so tense that every little noise made me jump.